Okay, in this video, we're going to learn how to use Venn diagrams to take a look at probability. So number 10 says 40% of students at Central play a fall sport, 52% of students at Central play a spring sport, and 30% do both. What percent of students only play a sport in the spring? So we're going to have one circle here for fall sports, and then the second circle is going to be for spring sports. The overlap of the Venn diagram, hopefully it's obvious to you, but that represents people who are playing fall and spring sports. And then outside the two circles, not fall or spring. So maybe they play a winter sport, maybe they don't play any sports at all. Okay, so 40% of students at Central play a fall sport, and 30%, 52 play spring, and 30% do both. So I'm going to do the 30% that do both first. 30% do both. And you could just put a number 30 there. Like sometimes I like that to represent my number instead of a decimal. I'll just say, okay, let's pretend there's 100 students, so 30 of them do both. Now, if they said 40 do a fall sport, right, 40% do a fall sport. So if I had 100 students, and I'm just using that number as a random, 100 students, so 30 of them do both. It says 40 do a fall sport. Well, I already have 30 in the fall sport category. This 30 is in the fall, it just happens to also be in the spring. So how many more would be in the fall? It wouldn't be 40, because now I'd have 70 in the fall circle. It would just be 10. So now inside my fall circle, I have 40 students, or 40%. In my spring circle, I have 52 play spring. So if I already have 30 in the spring, this is going to be an additional 22. Make my spring circle red. And again, I have this 30. This has to be blue and red. So I'm pretty creative, you know, basic art. So we're going to call that purple. So the 30 purple is in between blue and red. So I have 40 total in the fall. I have 52 total in the spring. I have 30 that play both. And then if I want to know what percent of students don't play fall or spring, so I have 10 plus 30 plus 22, it's 40, 62. There's 62 students represented in the fall and spring sports. So 100 minus 62 would be 38. I have 38 students that don't play a fall or spring sport. Now the question, what percent of students only play a sport in the spring? Excuse me. What percent of students only play a sport in the spring? So only in the spring, 22 out of the 100, or 22%. Okay, same thing. What percent of students play a sport in the spring, given that they play one in the fall? I'm going to actually try to copy this on the other page. So what percent of students play a sport in the spring, given that they play a sport in the fall? So remember, for conditional probability, we change the total number. So instead of this being out of 100 students, right? Instead of it being out of 100, this is a conditional probability problem. It says given that they play in the fall. So instead of out of 100, we're going to say there are 40 that play in the fall. What percent of students play a sport in the spring, given that they play a sport in the fall. So just looking at the ones inside the blue circle, how many of the ones inside the blue circle play a sport in the spring? Well, 30 do. So 30 out of 40. So 75%. Your probability there would be 0.75 or 3/4 or 75%. 75% of the students who play a sport in the fall also play one in the spring. All right, this one says 75% of students at Central have at least one sibling, 45 have at least one pet, 25 have a sibling and a pet. So we have my sibling circle and my pet circle. Again, start with the one where it's both. 25% of students have a sibling and a pet. So 25 both. Go back to the beginning. 75% of students at Central have at least one sibling. So I need 75 inside the sibling circle. I already have 25. So 25 plus 50 is 75. "45% of students at Central have at least one pet. I already have 25 in the pet, so I need 20 more. All right, what percent of students do not have either? So add up everything I have here. 50 plus 25 is 75. 75 plus 20 is 95. So what percent is left? Just 5. And that would be, from my Venn diagram, that would be just outside here. So you can use Venn diagrams if they're helpful for you. If you're just given some information, you can draw yourself a Venn diagram and see if that's helpful.